Hello and welcome to the 9th episode of the Dirty Side of the Grid podcast, where we've turned up late to qualifying because we're stuck behind Nikita Mazepin. I'm Yusuf and this is my co-host Muhammad, and this is our kind of review of this 2021 season. So having had a few weeks to kind of think about what happened, digest everything, what are your kind of thoughts on the season?
I'd say, I don't know, overall it was entertaining, as we all know, but it's been interesting knowing the result to look back and see, just in general, the hints of things happening and stuff. It's almost like looking back, you can see where the controversies were and where things started and how things worked out and the stories that ended up fizzling into nothing and then the ones that actually came through. So, I don't know, it's been nice to look at it as just the general development of everything as a whole.
Obviously disappointing since you're a Lewis fan.
It's annoying, but can't really do anything about it. Still waiting for Massey to get kicked out,
Yeah.
but I guess that's not happening.
It's coming.
I hope it is. What do you think?
I think he has to get kicked out. They're gonna, Toto even came out, I think they're gonna get rid of the idea that the team bosses can talk to...
Oh yeah, that's going.
That's going, definitely. I think the idea of us listening to what's happening between the teams and the FIA or Michael Massey, I think that should go as well. Because I think that he's forced into, in the back of his mind, he's they can hear what's happening, so they're gonna judge.
Yeah.
So he does something.
They should bring back
I think that should go.
the driver briefings though. That was nice.
That was nice, yeah.
Sorry, I like that sense of openness, but definitely during the race it should go. What did you think of the whole season though?
I think, overall as a season, it's probably the best season we've seen since, the one that comes to mind is 2010 maybe, something like that.
Yeah.
It's probably 2010 is the one that really comes to mind. Maybe 2012 as well. But over the course of 8-9 years, it's been dead. It's just been Mercedes domination. Literally, I saw this stat this morning. In the past, since this turbo hybrid era started, so 2014, Mercedes has taken 53 1-2s. Ferrari has taken 3 1-2s, P1, P2. Red Bull has taken 1, and McLaren has taken 1. So combined, the 3 next teams are literally within 48 or something of them, or 49.
That is ridiculous. And you've got to remember, most of that would have ended after most of it would have ended after 2016, because after that Bottas wasn't exactly P2 material.
Yeah, but that's crazy.
That does show the domination.
The level of domination they had was insane. It's along the lines of the same thing that Red Bull had for those 4 years.
Yeah.
Where they just had such a good car.
But the main thing I guess is the on-track action. I'm sure we'll get into it in a bit, but the key difference between this year and the other years is that Max and Lewis were on the same part of the track for quite a lot.
In terms of, so the season started in Bahrain, so basically through pre-season testing it looked like Red Bull had the better car, they had better pace and everything, but it's always the case where Mercedes tend to be a bit slow or not as quick at testing.
Yeah,
as when they come.
I remember them trying to convince us that they were actually I think they were actually
this year there were
setup issues or something.
Exactly, yeah. This year they were trying to convince us that we actually don't have that great of a car.
No one believed them. They're oh no, we're actually slow this time, and everyone's yeah, shut up.
But so the race started with Max taking pole, and then it was kind of a standard race. Max led from the start. He went on. Basically, he was untouchable. As in, he built a gap to Lewis, and then. You have to give it to Mercedes. I think this is one of the few times, over the course of the season, when you look at Mercedes' strategy, it was a bit shaky. You'd see glimpses of the Mercedes team, and then for a few races you'd just be what is happening?
Ferrari level.
Yeah, you exactly what are you doing? But this time in Bahrain they did a great job where Lewis essentially stayed out. He undercut Max, and then he stayed out on the hard tires. And it was just it was an incredible race. I think if you're sitting at home watching, if you're a Lewis fan, you're incredibly scared because Max is going to catch Lewis. And this is the first time, I think, in a very long time, I think ever for Max, where he's hunting down Lewis because he is in a faster car, purely on pace, and he has the chance to actually just go overtake Lewis and win.
Yeah.
That was the first time I think ever that happened.
Because last time was Monaco, and that doesn't exactly count.
Yeah,
really.
exactly. It was because Lewis was in like really old tires, but this time it was there was old tires, but he genuinely had the pace. And basically the only thing that happened really was he mistimed the overtake.
Yeah.
He overtook Lewis, but then he overtook Lewis when he was fully outside the track, and he had to give the position back. I think this is why you have to say this incident takes me back to what happened in Saudi. So in Bahrain, he gave back the position at a non-optimal point of the track where he could have had a few more corners.
Yeah.
And essentially what happened is Lewis was able to keep him behind for the rest of the race. There was no chance for him to have another go at Lewis. But with Saudi, that's why he wanted to give it back on the straight. So you get DRS. So essentially, he learned his lesson.
Yeah.
It's
definitely interesting to see the difference in those two.
Yeah, I think this is kind of where you see, like, after this race, you start to see Max kind of mature. And kind of like he's picking his moments when he has to pick an overtake. He is picking his moments. He's not going with an he's not mistiming it like this. Like usually, like for instance, when you look back at Monaco, when he came to overtake, he overtook at a point where he couldn't really overtake. Bahrain, he lost a race. Well, he didn't. He came P2, but he lost a race because he did not time his overtake correctly. When you go into the later on in the season, he starts to kind of.
I'd say he's still not there, but there's definitely an improvement in that sense.
There is an improvement though.
There's an improvement, yeah.
Kind of mentions of like people who performed well. Lando got P4, which is great. He's ahead of Perez, and obviously, the one everyone was talking about was Yuki. Yuki had an incredible first race.
Oh, yeah.
He had a really, really good first race, and it kind of just went downhill from there.
The hype for Yuki was insane.
I think there was not a lot of hype before the season started, but at Bahrain he performed really well. He had a few good overtakes, and then everyone was like, oh, and then he just disappeared into the distance. And everyone's like, where did you go?
Yeah, on Twitter he was becoming almost one of the, Charles Lando. Not obviously to that level, but he was developing his like corner. I don't see them anymore. I don't know where they've gone. I don't know if they've turned into Gasly fans, but there was a lot of people trying to talk about how good he was in his junior career and stuff. And
he's a very good driver, but I think he obviously throughout the season you've seen he's matured. I think by the end of the season, like Abu Dhabi, he performed really well. Like he got, I think it was a P4, P5?
4, yeah.
P4. Which is very, very good. That's ahead of Gasly, ahead of Bottas. You have to give it to him, that's very good. But it's kind of very little, very late. So we kind of have to see next season what he does. I think next season against Gasly, you kind of see, because you have Gasly as a benchmark in the car. Is the car good? Is the car bad? Is the car very bad? So we kind of get a sense of how he's really doing. So Bahrain ended essentially with Hamilton leading, 25 points to 18. I think in the end, who got the fastest lap? Was it? I think it was Sergio. Yeah, I think they pitted him in the end to get the fastest lap. And then Italy. Do you remember Italy?
Italy. Oh yeah.
You have to remember Italy.
Yeah, I do.
Lewis took pole.
I was screaming, bro. I was so mad.
Lewis took pole, and then Max sent it into the first. So Lewis took pole.
Yeah.
And then in corner 1, 2, I think it's turn 3. Max just sent it.
I remember which one it is. I don't know what number.
I think it's turn 2, turn 3 maybe.
I haven't played all the games, so I don't know.
He overtook Lewis and just squeezed Lewis.
Yeah, this is the first sign of the.
This is
Verstappen. Well, I mean, we already knew he did this, but this was the first time he's done it in like a
championship kind of.
Yeah, when Lewis has a reason to fight him, because before it was always Lewis just giving him space because he knew that he didn't need to fight him.
Yeah, because he's gonna overtake him and just win the championship. I think this is where you kind of. This is my issue with Lewis is. He was too soft at the beginning. Like obviously you don't need to crash and get out, but you need to defend. Like he was defending, like his defense was very soft. Like he could have put up more of a battle in like a lot of these overtakes in the beginning of the season, but he didn't put as much as a fight. I think he didn't really put up a fight like as much when during overtaking, to like the last 3-4 races.
I'd say when he did put up a fight, I'd agree that he definitely gave Verstappen the benefit of the doubt and he moved out of the way and all of this stuff. I'd say this one he didn't really have much room to go, and it was wet, they were on inters. But in general, he definitely could have been more aggressive with Verstappen. But the problem is when he was and when he stood his ground, he got completely flamed for it. Like Silverstone was the first time I'd say he properly stood his ground. We'll get onto it later. But he got slated for that. He got
But
you know, all
that
of
was
the dodgy
difference
comments
in-
from Red Bull, there was all that sort of stuff.
But that was
and
a
then same
different
thing in Monza
situation
as well.
from Monza was not his fault. Monza, I think,
No, it
all
wasn't,
the
but
heat,
you could say he
all
stood
the
his
heat,
ground as well.
yeah, but all the heat was towards Red Bull at Monza because it wasn't his fault. But with Silverstone, I think it's a bit different because Cops is an incredibly fast corner. I think that's why there was the heat there, and it wasn't like. We'll get onto it later, but he didn't hit the apex. There were a few things he could have done better, but obviously, like him not hitting the apex came from like Verstappen going very, like towards the right, so he couldn't like if Lewis overtook him like at the very edge, he can't hit the apex.
We'll go into it, yeah. So
Yeah, we'll get onto it a bit
turn,
later.
whatever, lap one of.
Yeah, so
Emilia
Verstappen
Romagna.
overtakes him, and this is I think this is the first time we've seen Verstappen have a chance to actually overtake Lewis and actually outpace him throughout the race. Lewis pitted, he was gaining on Max, he was doing really well, and then while overtaking a back marker, Lewis, I don't know why, he goes onto the wet patch from the dry.
I'm still pissed George didn't get out of the way.
And
It was
then-
George Russell, because I
and
remember
then-
this vividly.
And then he just went whee into the barrier.
George,
To be fair, he did get it out of the barrier. He
that
got
was,
it out of the
yeah,
gravel.
this was smart. People
He
didn't
brought
give him
it
credit
back.
for this.
He brought it back. He was racing. I think he was down to like P7 or something, and then from there he was very, very lucky. You have to say he's very lucky that George Russell sent it straight into Valtteri Bottas.
The timing of that
And-
incident was great. Yeah.
Exactly, because red flag, changing the tires. He got to put a new like front wing on. He put on new tires, and the hunt was on. But this is one point. I think Lewis was complaining in Saudi that Verstappen got to change his tires under the red flag
Yeah, he complained about the
because
the
Lewis
red flag itself.
they pitted and then Verstappen got the free pit stop essentially, but Lewis got a free pit stop here. So I'm only bringing this up just to mention that it did balance out. The
Yeah.
whole rule of being able to change tires under the red flag, it generally balances out. I think the ones that are actually like doesn't really balance out is like the midfield teams, because it's kind of like depends on your luck really. And
Yeah.
like most of the time, like say someone like Lando, it just goes against him every time.
I have no issue with that rule personally.
Yeah. So after that, the hunt was on. Lewis managed to come back. He got P2 and then, which is you have to give him that was very good. It was a very good drive.
Solid. I'm still I think he admitted afterwards in an interview or something, but like obviously not at the time, but a bit after. It was a bit, I don't know, kind of desperate. Like almost he'd run out of patience. Normally he's very patient and blah blah and all of this. There are a couple times in this season he's lost his patience. I'd say this was definitely the first one, where he just went. There was no reason. He didn't need to be that aggressive, but he did. He wasn't even aggressive with Max. He was trying to overtake George. I'm still annoyed, George. Like, there's a dry patch and a wet patch, and the blue flagged car is not moving to the wet patch. Obviously, George has no,
I think
there's nothing to say he has to do that.
It's the first
It's
corner,
just
but it's the
annoying.
first corner. I think the blue flag was waved.
So yeah, so that would explain
So
why
he
George
still,
wouldn't
yeah, he
exactly
still has
move
a
out
few
the way
corners
and
to
all of it.
move out of the way. Obviously, it's not like a very good corner to move out of the way because you are screwing up your race
Yeah.
by moving out of the way. So I think he would have moved out of the way later on. But this is one thing where you kind of stop and think back, and you're like, Lewis from a few years ago would not have made this mistake.
Yeah.
This is kind of the start of the glimpse where when you go back and look at Lewis from say like 2014 to 2020, you kind of see Lewis as being incredibly consistent. Like Lewis is incredibly consistent. Obviously with Nico there were like incidents, but
Yeah.
but Lewis is generally very consistent. This was the first time where it wasn't an incident where he crashed with someone or anything. It was literally just his fault.
Yeah.
And I think this was the first time I've seen Lewis like throughout the season make a lot of mistakes.
Yeah.
And it's not what you kind of expect from someone like him. because you don't expect him to kind of. He set the standard so high
Yeah,
that you're like, why did he do that?
it was weird. Yeah,
It's literally the blue
It's like
flags.
he-
Just wait. Like one more corner, he would have, or two more corners, he's overtaken George, and he had the pace to overtake Max.
yeah.
But I think like people you have to mention here is Lando. Lando defended against Lewis. Like at the very end, Lewis obviously overtook Charles,
Oh yeah.
and he came
yeah,
back, and Lando put up an incredible defense. He ended up getting P3, which I think he did. I wanted him to get P2 at the time. I thought he deserved it. But he put up an incredible defense, and he actually did really, really well. And like you can see, like the gap between Max and Lewis is like 22 seconds, and that mainly comes from like Lando holding him up. But in the end, like obviously the Mercedes had like way more pace.
Yeah, credit to him as well, Lewis. When he crashed into the barrier, he wasn't. So he bounces back off the barrier, whatever it is. The situation he's in is the tires are in the gravel. Actually, no, yeah, he stops just before the barrier, and the tires are in the gravel. So to stop himself from being stuck in the gravel, which he could have easily been, he moved his car forward, which is what broke his front wing, and he crashed himself into the barrier to keep his tyres out of the gravel, and that's how he got back out again. So that was, I don't know.
He obviously
something I
learned
noticed.
from China in 2009.
Fuck's sake.
Yeah, so when Lewis came out, he came out in 9th, and he was able to recover to 2nd. So overall, because Lewis took the fastest lap, Lewis was still, like, so up to 2nd race, Lewis is still in the lead of the championship.